They say money reveals who people really are. I never believed that until the day my husband won $12 million and I discovered I'd been married to a stranger for 8 years. My name is Daniela Miller, though everyone calls me Dani. At 42, I was a project manager for a construction company in Orlando, making $85,000 a year. Comfortable enough for our modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. My husband Sean came from the Thorns, one of those old Southern families with serious money. His father Richard owned half the commercial real estate downtown, and his mother Eleanor never let anyone forget their prestigious lineage. When Sean brought me home 8 years ago, I should have seen the signs. Eleanor's smile never reached her eyes. Richard called my career my little job, with barely concealed amusement. His brother Marcus treated me like hired help. But I was young and in love, and Sean seemed different from them. He worked at a tech startup, making decent money, but nothing like his family's wealth. He chose me, I told myself. That had to mean something. The marriage contract should have been my first warning. 3 days before our wedding, Richard summoned me to his lawyer's office. Sean sat beside me, nervous but encouraging. "It's just a formality, Dani." Richard leaned back, his cold blue eyes fixed on me. "Daniela, this contract protects what belongs to our family. Nothing personal." I read through the dense legal language, trying to understand terms like separate property and marital assets. Sean urged me to hurry. The lawyer explained it seemed reasonable enough. Their family assets would remain separate, mine would remain mine. What I missed, buried in Section 4.2, was a clause that would change everything years later. At 24, dizzy with love, I signed without understanding. Our early years seemed genuinely happy. Sean was attentive, supportive, seemingly content with our middle-class lifestyle despite his family's wealth. We endured their subtle condescension at holidays, but Sean always defended me afterward. We tried for children for years, suffering through 2 miscarriages and fertility treatments that drained our savings. Sean seemed to suffer alongside me, assuring me we'd be okay either way. I thought we were a team. The lottery ticket was my weekly indulgence, $5 every Friday after work at the gas station near our house. I'd been buying the same numbers for 3 years, a combination of birthdays and anniversary dates that meant something to us. Sean used to tease me about it, calling it my retirement plan. I always bought it with cash from our joint checking account, the same account we used for groceries, utilities, and everything else. March 15th changed everything. I was making dinner when the lottery drawing came on the kitchen television. I wasn't even watching, just listening to the familiar rhythm of numbers being called while I stirred pasta sauce. Then I heard them. My numbers. All of them. I dropped the wooden spoon and ran to grab my ticket from my purse, checking it again and again. $12 million. After taxes, about $7.2 million. Enough to change our lives forever. Sean came home to find me sitting at our kitchen table, staring at the ticket. "What's wrong?" he asked, seeing my shell-shocked expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I won," I whispered. "Sean, I won the lottery." The transformation wasn't immediate. For the first few hours, Sean seemed as stunned and excited as I was. We called in sick the next day, spent hours on the phone with lottery officials and tax attorneys, made lists of all the things we could finally do. Travel, buy a bigger house, maybe adopt the children we'd never been able to have naturally. But by the second day, something had shifted. Sean started making phone calls in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say, "Just family," or "handling some business." The Thorns appeared at our house that evening without invitation, descending like well-dressed vultures with champagne and congratulations that felt hollow. "Darling Daniela," Eleanor cooed, embracing me with arms that felt stiff as branches. "Such wonderful news for our family." "Our family. Not you or even you two. Our family." Richard was more direct. "Sean, son, you'll need to be smart about this. Lottery winners often lose everything within a few years. Lucky for you, we know exactly how to protect this windfall." I noticed they didn't include me in their planning sessions. When I tried to join conversations about investment strategies or tax shelters, they'd subtly change the subject or suggest I handle the immediate concerns like grocery shopping or dinner preparations. It was the same dismissive treatment I'd endured for 8 years, but now it felt sharper, more pointed. Sean began to change too. The loving husband who'd held me through fertility treatments became distant, distracted. He'd disappear for hours to meet with his family's financial advisors, coming home with complicated explanations about trusts and asset protection that excluded me from any real decision-making. "The money needs to be handled carefully, Dani," he'd say when I pressed for more involvement. "My family has experience with this kind of wealth management. You wouldn't understand all the legal complexities." 3 weeks after winning, Sean suggested we separate our finances for tax purposes. He wanted me to transfer the lottery money to a new account in my name only, which seemed reasonable until I realized I wouldn't have access to the investment decisions being made with my own winnings. When I questioned this, his mask finally slipped. "Listen, Dani," he said, his voice carrying a tone I'd never heard before. Cold, dismissive, almost cruel. You got lucky with some numbers. That doesn't make you a financial expert. My family has been managing money longer than you've been alive. Trust the process. Trust the process. As if my own lottery winnings were some business venture I'd stumbled into by accident, the breaking point came on a Thursday evening in early April. I'd spent the day at work, trying to maintain some normalcy while my marriage crumbled around me. I came home to find Sean and his entire family gathered in our living room, legal documents spread across our coffee table like battle plans. "Oh good, you're here," Sean said without looking up. "We need your signature on a few things." Marcus smirked from his position by our fireplace. "Just some paperwork to protect your assets, Dani. You know, from yourself." I sat down and began reading. The documents were dense with legal jargon, but the gist was clear enough. They wanted me to place the lottery winnings in an irrevocable trust, with Richard Thorne as the trustee. I would receive a monthly allowance, but all major financial decisions would require the approval of the trust board, which consisted entirely of Sean's family members. "This is insane," I said, looking around the room. "You want me to sign away control of my own money?" Eleanor adjusted her pearl necklace, a gesture I'd learned meant she was about to say something particularly cutting. "Darling, you're being emotional. This is about protecting your future. Our future." "Besides," Richard added, not bothering to hide his condescension, "what do you really know about managing this kind of wealth? You've never had money before." Sean finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke something inside me that had been cracking for weeks. There was no love there, no partnership, just calculation and entitlement, as if my lottery win was something that had happened to him rather than me. "Just sign it, Dani," he said. "Stop being difficult." Difficult. After 8 years of marriage, after supporting his career moves and enduring his family's contempt, after sharing everything I had with him, I was being difficult for wanting control over my own lottery winnings. I stood up, gathered the documents, and walked to our kitchen. I could hear them murmuring behind me, probably about my emotional outburst or inability to see reason. I stood at our kitchen sink, looking out at the garden I'd tended for years, and made a decision that would change everything. I fed every single document into our paper shredder. The silence from the living room was deafening. Then came the explosion of voices, Richard's booming outrage mixing with Eleanor's sharp protests and Sean's demands that I stop acting crazy. I walked back into the room, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. "I'm not signing anything," I announced. "These are my lottery winnings, bought with money from our joint account, and I'll decide how they're managed." Sean's face went red. "You can't be serious. You need us, Dani. You need me." "Do I?" I looked around at their furious, entitled faces. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you need me. Or rather, you need my money." That's when Sean said the words that ended our marriage. "You were nothing when I met you, and you'll be nothing when I leave you. The only valuable thing about you is dumb luck." The room went quiet. Even his family seemed shocked by the venom in his voice. But I felt something unexpected wash over me. Relief. Finally, after years of subtle put-downs and condescension, the truth was out in the open. They'd never respected me. They'd tolerated me, and now they wanted to use me. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you. Get out of my house." "Your house?" Marcus laughed. "Sean's name is on the deed too." I smiled, remembering something from our marriage contract that apparently none of them had considered. "Actually, check section 7.3 of that prenup you made me sign. Any real estate purchased with my separate income remains my separate property. I bought this house with my salary. Sean's name might be on the deed for legal purposes, but according to your own contract, it's mine." Richard's face went pale as he realized the implications. Their own legal maneuvering had trapped them. The next morning, I called in sick and spent the day researching divorce attorneys. I needed someone who understood high-stakes family law, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by the Thorne family's reputation and resources. After several calls, I found exactly what I was looking for. Lucas Sterling had a reputation as the most ruthless divorce attorney in Central Florida. His office was in a gleaming downtown tower, and his hourly rate made my eyes water, but he came highly recommended for cases involving significant assets and adversarial families. Lucas was younger than I'd expected, probably mid-40s, with prematurely silver hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. He listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Mrs. Miller, I have to say, this is one of the more interesting cases I've seen this year. Your husband's family appears to have made several critical errors." He explained that under Florida law, lottery winnings were generally considered marital property if bought with marital funds, regardless of whose name was on the ticket. More importantly, the prenup I'd signed actually worked in my favor in ways the Thornes hadn't anticipated. Section 4.2, which they probably included as boilerplate language, specifically states that any gambling winnings or prizes obtained during the marriage are subject to equitable distribution. They were so focused on protecting their existing wealth that they inadvertently gave you claim to half of any new wealth acquired during the marriage. I felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. So you think I have a case? Mrs. Miller, I think you have an excellent case, particularly if your husband attempts to claim the lottery money as separate property. Their own contract contradicts that position. Within a week, Sean was served with divorce papers. The reaction was swift and predictable. He hired the most expensive family law firm in Orlando, headed by a woman named Victoria Barnes, who specialized in protecting wealthy families from gold-digging spouses. The irony wasn't lost on me. The legal battle consumed the next 6 months. Sean and his family used every tactic they could think of, from character assassination to financial intimidation. They froze our joint accounts, forcing me to live off credit cards and loans against my 401 Kelvin. They spread rumors in our social circles that I was mentally unstable, driven mad by sudden wealth. Victoria Barnes filed motion after motion, trying to delay proceedings and exhaust my resources. But Lucas Sterling had prepared me for their tactics. They want you to run out of money and give up, he explained, but we have something they don't expect. We have their own contract working against them. The trial began on a humid Monday in September. The courthouse was packed with reporters. The Thorns arrived in full glory, Richard in his expensive suit, Eleanor dripping jewelry, Marcus sneering at the media. Victoria Barnes opened with attacks on my character, painting me as opportunistic. She argued the lottery ticket was my discretionary spending and separate property. Lucas's opening was devastating. He read Section 4.2 aloud. Any gambling winnings, lottery prizes, or similar windfall gains acquired during the marriage shall be considered marital property subject to equitable distribution. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, the defendants wrote the contract that entitles my client to half of these winnings. The trial lasted 3 days. Victoria Barnes called character witnesses who testified about Sean's good nature and my supposed instability. She brought in financial experts who argued that lottery winners needed professional guidance to avoid bankruptcy. She even suggested that I had deliberately purchased the winning ticket as part of some elaborate scheme to divorce Sean and take his family's money. Lucas dismantled every argument with methodical precision. He showed bank records, proving the lottery tickets were purchased with funds from our joint account. He presented evidence of the Thorns' pattern of excluding me from financial decisions about my own winnings. Most damaging of all, he called Sean himself to the witness stand. Under cross-examination, Sean crumbled. Lucas walked him through his family's attempts to control the lottery money, their efforts to isolate me from financial decisions, and his own cruel words on the night I refused to sign their trust documents. By the time Lucas finished with him, Sean looked exactly like what he was, an entitled man who had tried to steal his wife's lottery winnings with legal trickery. Mr. Thorne? Lucas said in his final question, did you or did you not tell your wife that the only valuable thing about her was dumb luck? Sean's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Sean had no choice but to confirm his own words, spoken in front of his entire family. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and delivered a verdict that changed my life forever. In the matter of Miller versus Thorne, we find for the plaintiff. The court awards Mrs. Daniela Miller 50% of the net lottery winnings, totaling $3.6 million. The gavel fell with finality, and I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in 8 years, I was truly free. Sean's face went white. Eleanor clutched her pearls so tightly I thought she might break them. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Only Marcus seemed unfazed, probably calculating how this would affect his own inheritance. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me with microphones and cameras. Mrs. Miller, how does it feel to win such a significant settlement? One asked. I thought about everything I'd been through, all the years of subtle abuse and condescension, the betrayal of discovering who my husband really was. Justice, I said simply, has a very distinctive taste. The months that followed were transformative. I used my settlement to start Miller Construction, focusing on affordable housing that created jobs and helped working families. The company grew rapidly, fueled by my experience and reputation for treating workers fairly. Sean struggled with reduced circumstances, working for his father's company at a fraction of his previous lifestyle. His family's reputation suffered significantly in Orlando's business community. 6 months after the trial, I encountered Sean at a grocery store. He looked older, defeated, pushing a cart with store-brand items. Our eyes met, and he approached slowly. Dani, he said quietly. You look good. Happy. I am happy, Sean. Happier than I've been in years. Do you think you could ever forgive me? For what I said, what we did? I've already forgiven you, I told him honestly. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger was just another way of letting you control my life. He looked hopeful. Could we maybe talk sometime? About who we used to be? I shook my head gently. Who we used to be doesn't exist anymore. You showed me exactly who you really were, and I finally learned to believe you. As I walked away, pushing my cart toward the checkout line, I felt the final chains of our relationship break. I wasn't his victim anymore, wasn't defined by his family's approval or disapproval. I was simply Dani Miller, successful businesswoman, lottery winner, and finally, truly free. Now, 2 years later, as I sit in my office overlooking downtown Orlando, I can see construction cranes everywhere, some of them working on my projects. Miller Construction has built over 200 affordable homes and created more than 300 jobs. I've been featured in business magazines as one of Florida's most successful female entrepreneurs. The Thorne family taught me something valuable, though not what they intended. They showed me that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones most willing to exploit you. They demonstrated that respect can't be demanded or inherited, only earned. Most importantly, they proved that the strongest weapon isn't money or social status, but knowledge of your own worth and the courage to defend it. I still buy lottery tickets occasionally, though I hardly need the money now. It's not about winning again, it's about remembering that sometimes the biggest risks pay off in ways you never expected. When I bought that ticket with $5 from our joint checking account, I thought I was gambling on numbers. Instead, I was betting on myself, and I won far more than $12 million. I won my freedom, my self-respect, and the knowledge that I never have to settle for being treated as less than I am ever again. And that feeling, watching the sun set over the city where I've built my new life, is worth more than any lottery jackpot could ever be.